Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And I'm here with your May weekly Astro update. And we've got a great overview of the month of May coming up for you. And I'm here with the lovely Mandy Rae from Ecstatic Astrology. Thank you so much for joining us this month, Mandy Rae.
Oh, I'm happy to be here as always.
Yeah, so Mandy Rae has joined us with Astero Sophia Kairos. And if you enjoy this, please do remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And if a word of the week comes up with Shauna, Mandy Rae, we've been coming up with a word of the week. If we find that a word's popping up with every transit, then we decide that it's the word of the week and come up with a suitable emoji by the end of the recording. So let's see if that happens.
I hope it will.
Yeah. So here is our overview of the month. I should have said we're looking at the 30th of April to the 7th of May.
Yeah. As astrologers, we look forward so much that sometimes you forget that you're not in May already.
Yeah. We're recording at the end of April, just on that T-square that's so difficult with the sun squaring Pluto. So yeah, bear with us.
Indeed.
It's challenging right now, even if May gets a little bit easier. So we have got, coming up to the 7th, we've got Venus meeting Neptune on the 2nd, Pluto going retrograde. This is exciting because it's wholly within Aquarius. It's the first time it's not retrograding back to Capricorn. Mercury will be meeting Chiron. So those are our transits for this week. And if you want to take a screenshot of the whole month, then you can follow us through all of the weekly updates and anticipate what we're going to cover. And here is our overview of the whole month. And the lovely website astroseek.com provides this and does give a list as well. But I really do like this circular chart because it really gives us an idea. We can see where there's clusters of planets. It's easier to see by eye where they all are. So if I start talking with the moon, and then Mandy's going to take you away with the sun. So the moon circles the whole of the zodiac. So that's not shown here because it would be all the way around. So in 28, 29 days, it circles the whole zodiac. But we do have lunations coming up, and they will be this month in Scorpio and then in Gemini. So they're going to be, Scorpio is a fixed sign and Gemini is mutable.
So the sun it generally stays in one sign. That's what a month is, right? Moves into Gemini May 22nd. And that's a big vibe shift. Taurus is a fixed sign, and then it will move into Gemini, which is much more frenetic.
Yeah. And of course, it'll be meeting Jupiter there.
It sure will.
Mercury is direct now, and at the moment it's away from the sun, but it's going to be traveling closer, and we see it's traveling quite a distance. It has been slow while it's been retrograde, but it's traveling all that way, starting the month in Aries, but going all the way through Taurus and ending up in its own home sign of Gemini, going past Uranus on its way, going like overlapping with Venus's path, but I don't think they're going to meet at the same time. But like on the tails of Jupiter by the time we end the month out.
And then we can take Venus moving through Aries. And I think probably the most significant part of that is it will, and we'll talk about this, meet Neptune, but it will also be out of shadow eventually. And that will be nice because it was retrograde in Aries.
Yeah. She's got a little way to go before she leaves her shadow. I think it's about the middle of the month that she leaves that shadow, and it was at 9-10 degrees, and I was always getting confused who was who, but I think it was Mercury went retrograde at 10 and Venus went retrograde at 9.
Yeah, that's right. Venus is out of shadow on the 16th, I believe, of May.
So that will be nice for us because that's been a long story, shorter than Mars is, but like to have all three of those. But yeah, it's nice. Just at the moment we've got all these planets direct, so that really helps our get up and go.
It does.
And also the signs that they rule, it makes a difference, the signs that they rule and everything. We can see Mars as well. He'll be out of his shadow within the first few days of May. And he's picking up a lot of speed there. He's been so slow through those last degrees, particularly of Cancer, like really everybody feeling it. And Mars will be, is currently, as we're recording, opposing Pluto, which is like a lot of the difficulties that people are experiencing the last week in April. And that will be flowing forth into the first week, I suppose, of May as well. But those consequences will be playing out as it separates from Pluto. But it's picking up speed through Leo, and it will be out of its shadow and moving forth in a fiery sign where it feels a lot more comfortable, where it can take action.
Thank goodness. At the very beginning of May, to the first week, it moves out of shadow. So that will feel very nice. And Jupiter actually will be out of shadow by the time we get to May. And I'm very excited about that because it is charting new territory in Gemini, Jupiter in Gemini, and Venus in Aries. It's not the greatest place for either one of them to be. They don't really like to be there, but I'm kind of hoping Jupiter speeds along. Just get on out of Gemini. But for the month of May, it is still there. Charting new territory, though.
Which is always good. And of course, once it meets its ruler, we're going to see a difference there. Once Mercury joins it, that's going to be interesting. And we should say as we go, really, who this is affecting. Like for Jupiter, that's going to be the mutable signs because it's Gemini. So I've listed the signs here so you can see easily: Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. And like for Mars in Leo, we'd be looking at the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. And then for these Aries planets, for Venus and Mercury, we're looking at the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So that's where all that main action is. And then we have Saturn alone left in Pisces, but not for long. During this month, the 24th, Saturn will be doing its move into Aries. And this is kind of like the penultimate shift of a big planet that we're expecting for 2025. We've just got Uranus, then we'll be moving into Gemini coming up in July. But for the 2025 moves, it's like we're almost there now in knowing what these shifts are going to be and what's going to be in store for us. So Saturn's just finishing up its business in the last degrees there of Pisces. And this month, we'll see that move into Aries, and also that big meeting it's going to have with Neptune.
That's right.
That's a big deal for a lot of people.
It's a big deal.
And also because it's going to be sextiling Pluto. So we're going to see these outer planets having a conversation. And of course, they've been like separated. They haven't been able to see each other. And suddenly they come into, or by degree, as well as in sight. So that's a big deal as well. Something that astrologers get very excited about.
They do. They do. And I mean, even Uranus eventually in the later, actually this summer, will move signs. But for the month of May, Uranus is only moving just a few degrees in Taurus.
Not terribly far. And the same thing for Neptune. It's not moving very far. The big exciting thing for Neptune is waiting for Saturn to join its party, really. We were talking before we started recording about what this Neptune experience maybe in Aries is like, and how Neptune holds our collective dreams, and that maybe our old collective dream has lost water, because it's come from Pisces, which was a very comfortable place for Neptune. And now suddenly it's in this hot, steamy place of Mars. And maybe we're finding a new collective dream. In Aries, it's the pioneering place, the place of fighting and asserting and individuating itself. So it's finding, who are we now? When we've lost that dream, where are we going to go? And who are we? And Saturn will come, and Saturn's ready to build that dream, but it's also going to show us all the difficulties and problems.
Yeah, especially your delusions, the things that you think are good or real or any of that might be exposed with that conjunction.
The rose-tinted glasses of everything that we're holding on for, the nostalgia we've got for the past, we're going to be showing all the problems.
That's right. That's exactly right.
With that, and maybe we're going to have to abandon some of those old dreams and let them fall away before we can start building the new. I think that's going to be a challenging time, especially when they both go retrograde around the same time. Neptune retrogrades in October. Saturn starts its retrograde in September. So that might be
traveling together.
Yeah, those start
traveling partners.
And we have Pluto. It will retrograde this week.
It sure will.
Yeah.
And you can tell because on this flow chart, I like how this chart is done. AstroSeek's so great. But you can tell it doesn't move. And I love that it's just sitting there. And when a planet stations retrograde, it is louder.
Yeah, we get in touch with those significations, and we feel those significations a bit more. We can see them in the world, in the news. Even now, I suppose it's slowing and stationing, getting ready to station. Literally on the day that we're recording, the Pope died this morning. And I looked at the chart, and we had... The moon was conjunct Pluto.
I looked at it too immediately, and I was like, wow, you really couldn't get any more on point with it. And because Pluto is so much about power, and the Pope has a lot of it, and also death and rebirth and transformation. So the fact that the moon was there, it was a big deal.
Moon can represent the people, can't it, in mundane astrology. So it's It's like the people, and you see all the people gathering in Paul Square. So it's like the people coming to the Vatican as well to greet that power. And they'll be there the whole time while they choose a new pope.
That's right. And, you know, I really love that you have Black Moon Lilith on this, because that is where the moon is slowest. And it's very important to understand why, for instance, the moon might be in a sign for 3 days as opposed to 2 in some other. So the moon in Taurus will be moving very fast, and Black Moon Lilith is just a point in space, and it won't move very much in May. Scorpio moons will be longer. They'll be just a little longer this month.
Yeah, a whole thing, aren't they? I mean, I personally love a Scorpio moon. It's not a great place for the moon, but I love how things come through then. I feel more in touch with the Scorpio moon. So that's the overview of the month. I hope it makes sense. If you have any questions, please do put them in the comments. We'd love to help you. So here's our overview for the week. So we have the Venus conjunct Neptune, and this is going to be the first one that isn't in Pisces for a while. So these have been such a lovely experience when they were in Pisces, because Venus was in her exaltation and Neptune was in a happy place, and it was a really dreamy and sweet moment. They are quite quick, especially as Venus is now out of retrograde and picking up speed. So it doesn't last very long. So it'd be interesting to see how it feels for us as well during that time, because now it's in this fiery place where they're both a bit less comfortable. I've not had that experience of Neptune in Aries making these aspects now, so I suppose we're going to have to learn from experience how they show up.
Yeah, nobody alive has. It's a long orbit, 166 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and about 14 years in a sign. So a lot of us as astrologers started our astrology career with Neptune in Pisces, which feels like a very watery, happy place for Neptune. So it's the elders in our community who've had the lived experience of Neptune in different signs. So we're listening to them of what it might mean. And then we've got Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, and as I said, this is going to be interesting because it's the first one. It goes back to 1 degree, so it's going to be totally within Aquarius. And all the retrogrades before, since it went into Aquarius in 23, it's gone back over that cusp line back into Capricorn and finished up some business there. But now it's totally within Aquarius, and of course affecting the fixed signs Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio as well. Having a look back at what that early journey through the fixed signs has meant for us. And then we finish up with Mercury conjunct Chiron, the wounded healer in Aries. Again, our wounds around individuation and the self, and Mercury is the herald, again fresh from its retrograde story in this sign of standing up for ourselves and who are we and what do we want to say. And he's got a new message. It's a chance for healing, and for healing old wounds and maybe releasing them and bringing that through. What do you see here, Mandy?
Yeah, I feel very interested in the Pluto retrograde because it's so collective. Any of the outer planets are extremely collective, meaning I think we all sort of experience it together. And a lot of times you can see it on a world stage as well. I mean, I think a good example is the Mars-Pluto stuff going on right now. So, and that's the Pope, and that's all, everyone has a connection to that. So I think this first week of May it's like definitely a week to watch the news. Not that any week isn't now.
No, because the station so often just holds those highlighted stories that we can really identify with the planet that's moving.
Yeah, it's just a collective week. I mean, even Neptune is a collective archetype, and Chiron as well as a further out dwarf planet.
Okay, so let's have a look at Neptune conjunct Venus on the 2nd of May.
I'm very excited to see. Well, obviously, I think with Neptune moving into Aries, it's brand new. No one's ever really experienced it, like we said, and that's astrologers and non-astrologers alike. However, this is really the first moment, other than Mercury, that we have another very important personal planet, meaning up with Neptune at the very beginning of Aries. And I think it's going to teach us a lot about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 2026. Saturn this time will never get exactly conjoined to Neptune this year, but next year it will. So this is a moment that we all need to pause and see what is coming in. And as you said, Neptune represents collective dreams and also collective delusions. It's the ether. It is the thing we can't really describe. That is Neptune. But when you're putting Neptune in a sign that is less collective, Aries is about individuality and survival. And then you have this strange mixing of archetypes, and it's maybe dreaming better for our individual lives, but also being disillusioned by it. And so when Venus enters the picture, which also Venus is a very relational planet. It rules relationships and cooperation and peace. And Neptune being so idealistic, and that's kind of another Neptune thing. And Venus being in a sign that is so not what it normally wants to do. It wants to relate to others, and Aries just doesn't do that. So when you have Venus and Neptune coming together in this individual sign, there is a chance that we have some, I want to say, aha moments, especially about relationships in our lives, how they're, I don't want to say benefiting us, but that is what Venus brings. It's a beneficial planet. It's called a benefic, right? So you have to think maybe some good can come out of this. However, I do wonder if there may not be a moment where people are taken away by their ideologies, because Neptune is an idealistic planet, and the last time it was in Aries was the Civil War. So I think especially with the economy coming up, and that's all over the world, by the way. I mean, America has done some things to shake up the world. So what we're talking about here is money with Venus as well. So I think the economies are something to watch during this time. Mercury being in the same sign. Mercury rules commerce. So a lot of maybe fast movements and movements that can be looked at as maybe like, what are they thinking, is something we should at least have in our awareness that could be coming up for the very beginning of May. It is a Venus day. It's a Friday. So I do like that. Now, the more positives of this is inspiration and beautiful creations that come out of a Venus-Neptune conjunction. And I love that the moon is in Cancer. Another thing that really adds to intuition and being able to access our emotions to create. Granted, it's square. And there is the sign-based square there. So a square is 90 degrees. So it's not exactly square, the Venus-Neptune conjunction. It is square to Mercury, actually, now that I look at it, or it's just finished up, it's exact square to it. So there may be a little tension between our emotions and maybe some fight or flight responses on this day, but that really isn't coming from the Venus-Neptune conjunction. However, I think that all of this can get wrapped up into it. Mars in Leo is ruling the Neptune-Venus conjunction, and Mars rules Aries. And Leo is also another creative sign. It is the sign of the heart chakra and openness and the actor and the lion, Leo the lion, right? So it's very much something where I think there could be some really awesome creations that come out of this. I'm actually excited to see who's releasing music on this day, because probably somebody will be, and it might be awesome. But keep your wits about you. This is not a day I would spend money. Personal opinion. I would not go make big purchases on this day, because you get wrapped up into these Neptunian rose-colored glasses like we were talking about. And I'm on the board of a theater in my community, and we had a band play called Rose-Colored Glasses the other day, and all I could think of was Neptune. And it was actually during the full moon in Libra, at exactly the full moon moment in Libra. So that was kind of really funny to think about, because Venus can also be rose-colored glasses if you think about it. But the Venus-Neptune conjunction has potential if you know how to tap into it. And I think it's something like, this is a good time to maybe consider how you want to appear to others. Aries is very much about who you are as a person. And this is a good if you want to change your hair color, think about it on this day. Don't do it, but think about it on this day. Maybe entertain all of these ideas about what you want to create in the world, your dreams, how you want the world to look. It's a great day for that. I think that's, other than that, the sun being in Taurus may be significant because the sun rules Leo. So ultimately, we're looking at the fact that the Venus-Neptune conjunction answers to Mars, which then answers to the sun, which just answers back to Venus, because it's in Venus's sign. So I do think creativity is, and it's such a broad term, but people are creative in all sorts of different ways. My partner who does Excel spreadsheets right now can be creative in that. So I think this is a day to dream, to create, and to tap into your own emotions and intuition and let that come out on paper, through song, any way that you can.
We see Mars at 6, which is its shadow degree. It is the moment that Mars is just leaving that shadow. So it's the day that we can wave goodbye to that Mars retrograde story. So it's a good time to reflect on, if you haven't identified yet what your Mars retrograde story was, it might be a good time that story becomes clearer, and possibly, especially with the moon in Cancer, where Mars was retrograding through, that they might be willing to help you. Like Mandy said, that they're also like interconnected, where Mars in Leo and the Sun in Taurus in Venus's sign also connected. It's like really beautiful in that way. So yeah, we might not get the full experience of you never do get the full archetypal experience of just 2 planets, because they're so linked to everything else in the sky, the way that they're all connected. And also Venus is fresh from that conjunction with Saturn. So it's almost like she's bringing that information from Saturn and to Neptune, that she's gone from one meeting straight to another conjunction. And so she's like flowing forth from one and to the other, both being like really heavy duty, weighty planets. So she's like carrying a heavy briefcase. It kind of feels like a to-do list. If you see them as like meetings, that she's got this synodic cycle and things that they meet, and then she goes off on a fresh new journey and a fresh new agenda with each of them. And it feels like their agendas are linked in that way. And we know, of course, that Saturn and Neptune, like Mandy mentioned, they're not going to meet until 2026, but they're going to get so close. When, yes, within minutes in 2025 when they meet. So archetypally, we'll get a good insight into what that will hold for us in 2026. And then also, of course, Venus will be applying to that sextile with Pluto. So we may well see some of those significations coming in of that, possibly purging, getting rid of some of the old, with Pluto about to station retrograde.
Yeah, this does feel very fresh. I mean, even the fact that the moon is almost at the degree that Mars stationed direct. I mean, very close. It was 17, I think. And the next day, it's kind of wide, but it'll hit Mars pretty quick after this. The moon will. And it does feel like there are some ideas. It feels fresh. Like there are ideas that we have brought forward from Saturn, from the Mars retrograde. And this is a moment where we may go, you know what? I'm tired of all of that, and I want to do something new.
And that's so Aries, isn't it? It's like, this is going to be my thing, my way. This is who I want to be. And it just seems like Venus as well in Aries, like she's got to fight for her rights and who she is and how she's going to identify. She's in exile there from her home in Libra. She's far from home, so things aren't familiar. It's like being in a foreign land, and her dress and her style doesn't fit in, but does she blend in, or does she stand out, is who she is and how she looks? And, is she going to own her style, or is she going to adapt it and still be quirky and stand out with her own style, but like just adapt it a bit for the culture where she is, fighting for feminine rights and everything that brings, and how that stands up in the collective. I mean, here in the UK, there's been a whole debate because the Supreme Court last week ruled that the lawful definition of a woman is, because that debate has been going on for years. And it's like a politician's gotcha question, who do you think a woman is? And they've tied themselves in knots. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that a woman is biologically born a female, with female parts, and of course it's still rumbling on that people aren't accepting it, and there's protests and statues being defaced and violence and everything about that definition, and other people saying, well, yeah, isn't that common sense? I don't want to go into the ins and outs, but when they made that ruling, they also said that doesn't trespass on any human rights or other rights that everybody has. They don't want that definition to undermine any human rights or any rights to not be discriminated against also. It wasn't a case of one side winning against another. It was just a case of, okay, this is how it stands in law, but it's not how it stands in common decency and in respect and in not discriminating against any human individual. To give every human individual their dignity. So I think we've got a difficult time ahead as those human resources departments or whatever negotiate what this means and how to actually apply it, because that is tricky. I know things like medical procedures, there's been difficulties where they've twisted themselves in knots, and it's ended up having consequences because people don't know, like say where they're doing cervical screening or something, and they send out the invites and people don't know exactly who to send the invite to because they don't know who is a woman. So those invites have to be sent to the right people, and they don't want people without cervixes turning up, and they don't want people with cervixes not getting the invite. It's a tricky, so it seems very territory to navigate this, you know, who needs that invite so that they don't medically miss out on screening. So it is important that people with cervixes are screened, however they identify, and that has to be respected. And it's important that that's respected and not discriminated against, and also have laws that support when they're using that as a weapon, but respecting their dignity, but also respecting the need to get that right medically as well,
right.
so that mistakes don't happen and people don't miss those invites, or people aren't sent those invites when they don't need them. It's tricky, and I think that's what they were trying to clear up, but not cause more problems. And I think people are looking at the obvious problems and using it as a weapon to attack between groups, whereas I think people just want clarity. It's difficult. I don't want to wade into that debate, but yeah, it just feels like it fits into that timing of what's coming up there. Women's issues and the confusion over who is a woman, but also rights of people. Venus fighting for her rights, and that's all women, people who identify as women as well, fighting for their rights. They're entitled to their rights and their human rights, and to not be discriminated against. Okay, so then we move on to Pluto retrograde, and that's happening at 3:27 Universal Time on the 4th of May. It's showing British summertime on the chart there, so that's 4:27 in the UK, but in Universal Time it's 3:27. So yeah, adjust your clocks. And it's turning retrograde at 3 degrees of Aquarius, 49 minutes. So it's nearly got to 4 degrees. Just nearly, but it's turning back just before. Again, it will be turning back towards Neptune at 1 degree. So they'll be coming closer while it's retrograding. And of course, it will be reaching that 1 degree. So that sextile between them will be coming tighter. And I've got some questions here that I sometimes bring up when these planets are in this turning points, or as we said before, these stations can be louder, and Aquarius being a sign that represents the collective, quite often a sign of Saturn, and we see Saturn's approaching the anaretic degree, which can be loud, and it's near the North Node, which again can be loud and karmic and fated. So it feels like that's an important place for Saturn to be as the ruler of Pluto. So the questions are the wisdom of transformation, that some people use that word transformation for Pluto. I try to avoid it because it can be generic. I like to think of Pluto as empowerment, because whatever is transforming, I think it's ultimately empowering, but the process can be disempowering as you're going through it. If you've held on to things for too long, you can be disempowered, because Pluto can remove things from our lives that we're holding on to for too long. And the questions are, if you continue to live the way you're living now, what does your death look like? When you look back, as people say, like on a deathbed, because Pluto is that death and rebirth signification. So not a literal death, but a metaphoric one. Like they say, people never look back on their lives and regret working, or regret not working harder. That's not a thing. But what if you were to look back, or if you only had 24 hours left to live, what would you do? You know, what would be the most important thing to you? And could you put that in your life now? What would your bucket list look like? And could you start integrating that now? Do you have to wait until you think it's too late to start deciding on your bucket list? Or could you start integrating that now? And a retrograde is a great time to start thinking about what would your bucket list look like, and what parts of it could you start integrating? And also your own bid for personal power. Pluto represents power. And how does your personal power show up for you? And how does it scare you? Do you dim that light at all? And particularly, this is important when it's like opposite Leo. Leo wants to shine that light. So in Aquarius, you're looking at the collective, and in Leo, it's about shining that light brightly as an individual. And if it's scaring you and you're dimming it, why? You know, so it's a good time to like be reflecting on those things, I think.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Yeah. It's just nice to see the moon there with Mars, as Mars is flowing forth Mars has left now that opposition. It's kind of free of the retrograde story, but it's just got the moon where the moon is there bringing that information down to us. So it's like, okay, are you going to do this work or are you not? What is Pluto showing up for you? And, you know, if you want to work with it, the moon's going to help bring that information through for you.
That's right. I love it. I think too, when a planet goes retrograde and it's louder, but it's internal as well. It becomes more internal processing than outward processing. And in Aquarius, which is such a collective sign, it does feel maybe like a wake up moment or a wake up 6 months, really, because Pluto will be retrograde for a while. But this moment for sure is maybe a turn back in on yourself and go, what am I doing? What am I doing about all of this? You know, how do I use my time? How do I use my energy? It's a big picture thing, but the big picture inside yourself. And it's the first quarter square of the moon. So that's significant to me as well, because it's always a moment we take action, or at least realize we need to, after the new moon. And Pluto retrograde it's kind of a tense day, I think. I don't necessarily think that there's anything squishy about this moment. It feels kind of tense. So especially because the moon will have met up with Mars the evening before, or at least a few hours before. I don't have it exact, but it realizations.
Yeah, I always think of Pluto as like picking up that rock and seeing what's hidden
under it.
And those things that are in the shadows in your subconscious or whatever are suddenly coming forward, and that they're in your subconscious for a reason. It's like I talk a lot about healthy containers, but it's like a healthy container. Our brain does that. It suppresses things to keep us able to function. And then every now and then Pluto comes up and says, remember this? You haven't dealt with this yet. And it shows us this shadow part of ourselves. And it's like, now it's time to look at that, and come to terms with this is part of you. And when we're shown it, it's kind of like it is time to recognize that part of ourselves and integrate it. And even if we don't like it, that's important. And to like figure out, why don't we like it? What can we do about that? And before that rock goes back down and those insects go and scuttle safely back into the darkness, it's like, it's like a light being shone on it for a brief moment in time. But if we ignore it, it goes back under, but it festers under there then. If we don't recognize it, you can't continually sweep everything under the rock or under the carpet. It's sooner or later those secrets come to the light, and the more we avoid facing them, the more difficult and challenging it gets, when they do come to light, which I think is maybe why some people have more difficult Pluto experiences. I don't know. I don't want to blame people, and there can be things in the astrology as well, like aspects and everything that shows why they're more challenging. But I think as well, how willing you are to face, and having a knowledge of astrology helps, knowing that there's a Pluto, this is what's coming up, knowing that okay, it's time to face this helps. Knowing that that's what's happening and why helps us know it's time to face that. Helps. It's not to blame anybody that doesn't know that's what's happening.
I agree with that too. And I'm a 0-degree Pluto in Scorpio. And when I think of that, I think of all of my generation getting this Pluto square. I was born in 83, and I want to say it's 83 through like the mid 90s. That was Pluto Scorpio. It was only 10 years actually. And people will leave 83 out a lot of times, but 1983 babies also had it for like 2 months. It was in Scorpio. So yeah, it's like 83 to 94, I believe, that Pluto was in Scorpio. So that generation is getting the Pluto square. At the same time, the early Pluto and Leos are getting the opposition. Pluto takes 240 years that it is the orbit, 248. So it takes a long, long time for it to circle the zodiac. So it's really not a common thing to experience your Pluto opposition, but because of the orbits, Pluto and Leo generation is getting an opposition at the same time the Pluto and Scorpio generation is getting a square. And so clashes with those generations seem to be what's on deck right now. And a good example of Pluto and Leo is Donald Trump. He's got Pluto and Leo. Leo is, I want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about what everyone else needs, and that's not just a blanket statement. Every Leo is like that, but the generation can have that as their shadow. And then the Pluto and Scorpio generation can have, I think, dealing with oppression and dealing with some of the harder topics of life, like abuse and things of that nature, things you don't want to talk about. It's a Scorpio thing, right? Death. So you have Pluto and Aquarius coming in, And at this retrograde, it would not surprise me to see clashes, to see protests. But, you know, may the 4th be with you.
Absolutely.
It is the 4th, right?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, like you say, to watch that generational thing unfold as that goes, especially with it's the US Pluto return as well, isn't it?
Here we go. Chiron conjunct Mercury. That is 7th of May. I've spent some time with Chiron. Let me just put it that way. Chiron fascinates me as an archetype because it is so much about where we experience wounds and also where we experience healing. And so it's just a very sensitive point. By transit with Mercury meeting up with Chiron, Mercury is how we think and how we communicate and how we process the world, basically through our brains. That's what Mercury represents. And meeting up with Chiron here, it's very much an awareness of what you're sensitive to, what is bothering you, what is frustrating you, especially in Aries. And there, you know, when Chiron moved into Aries, or at least, I don't know if it's exactly when it moved into Aries, but there was a lot of talk about identity. Even in America, there's identity politics. It's kind of a catchphrase for political people. But that is what Chiron in Aries is working with, is healing the right to be here as we are without changing it, with just being ourselves. That is an Aries thing. So Mercury meeting Chiron here, I think, can bring up some of those topics, feeling like you need to attend to the wound, or maybe feeling is the wrong word. Thinking is probably more the right word with Mercury here. And what a funny thing that the moon is in Virgo at that same time, ruled by Mercury. So, and Virgo is a healing sign of itself. So I think to have Mercury being the ruler of the moon at that point with Chiron, it has potential to be an incredibly healing moment. And the moon is trine the sun that day. There's some flowing aspects to it in earth signs as well, with that being very grounding to this Mercury conjunction with Chiron and fire, because that can have the potential to be explosive, I think. But I think there's a lot of groundedness, a lot of intentionality to this, especially with, yes, Mars is in a fire sign, but it's a fixed fire sign. You know, I think it's just realization. I think maybe that's our word for the week, realizations. It does seem like that keeps coming up because I also love that Chiron looks like a key when you look at the symbol. It is the key to a lot of the places that I think hurt us and that we might hold that keep getting reopened up, those wounds. It's like you have a scar on your knee and you think it's healed. It's been 6 months since you had it, but then you bump it again and it reopens up. So there's potential for that on that day. It can be a sensitive moment, but it's also a moment which we need to attend to ourselves and attend to our healing, especially on topics of individuality and even maybe sometimes going out it alone. That can be an Aries thing too. But
I was thinking I included this little lady here, which is Eris, the strife and discord. She's the sibling of Mars, and she's said to be, in myth, she's the one who gave Eve the apple.
I'm giggling because it is chaotic energy with Eris there. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it is. So she likes to go in, and Helen of Troy, apparently she had a hand in causing that discord as well. So she goes around and sees like where things are going on nicely and sees where she can stir up some trouble. But again, she's ultimately fighting for feminine empowerment, but she's doing it through causing trouble, causing that chaos, disrupting where things are calm and the women aren't necessarily doing terribly well. She'll make sure, you know, where Eve was all nicely fine as the rib of Adam, she was like, no, this won't do. Let's take you out of this lovely paradise of the Garden of Eden and constructive world. So yeah, that's the sibling of Mars. She is the fighter. Very much Aries energy going on. It's not going to come easy. Maybe the words that we speak are tough and combative, and maybe we hear combative words as well, and it's worth remembering that it's affecting the people around us as well, even if it's not coming through ourselves. I mean, I also think when I see Chiron and Mercury together that sometimes we're speaking to help somebody else and then we realize that the words are something that we needed to hear. Maybe our inner child needed to hear, or something we needed to hear growing up, but you're like, oh yeah, that applies to me too. I wish somebody had said that to me. And you realize that you're kind of helping yourself while you're trying to help somebody else. That's how I think
The
of it.
wounded healer. Yeah.
But with Eris there, it's like maybe somebody's coming in and fighting, but you realize, you recognize their wound. You know that they're coming in, but it's from a place of fear or disempowerment, that they're angry. Quite often when somebody is angry, you're like, oh, what are they scared of? Why are they so angry? And try and bring that compassion into it with Chiron there. If that comes up for you, that's on the 7th of May, and that goes exact at 2:47, which is the middle of the night for us. So maybe the day before the 6th of May might be when that's applying, and it gets most intense. It's 2:47 British summertime, so it would be 1:47 universal time. So in America, it would be the 6th of May, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the evening time. So, and I love the fact that chaos is associated with Eris. The author Robert Anton Wilson. There's just this whole chaos magic theory stuff, and so when I see Eris, sometimes I think, chaos can be used for good, and chaos really is the only constant. It's like maybe why humans are here is because of chaos. So maybe in that situation you can use a little bit of that. If someone is, I like distract, or something like that. If someone is being a little combative, it's like when a kid falls, instead of going, oh no, are you okay, going, yay, and just shaking it up a little bit.
Yeah, you just got to scratch. You didn't break your neck.
Yeah,
you're fine. Yeah, I mean, if we'd all stayed in the Garden of Eden, we wouldn't even know that there were ups and downs in life. There's nothing to pursue, no goals, no motivations. You don't even know what happy is to recognize it.
Oh wow, first week of May.
First week of May. So thank you so much, Mandy Rae, for joining me. You can find Mandy Rae at ecstaticastrology.com. And I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology. And that was the first week of May. And our word for the week was, what was it, Mandy?
Realisations.
Realisations. So what would our emoji be? That wow face?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So if you have
maybe the one with the spinny eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The spiral eyes.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you have a realization this week, please do comment with the spiral eyes. You share it if you want to share it, but don't if you don't. And if we can help you with any questions, please do also share. And we'll be back next week with the 7th to the 14th of May. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
you.